My name is Julia, and I still remember the day my parents made it clear that their pride was worth more than my happiness. I was 26, standing at the edge of what should have been the most beautiful chapter of my life, my wedding day. For years, I'd built up a picture in my mind of how this moment would look. My father would be walking beside me down the aisle, his arm locked with mine, proud and emotional. My mother would be in the front row, dabbing at her eyes, smiling as if the universe had finally given her everything she'd ever dreamed of. The soft music, the scent of white roses, the glow of golden lights strung across the garden, all of it was exactly as I'd imagined. Everything except them. Their absence was louder than the music, sharper than the breeze, heavier than the weight of my dress. Months before this day, I had told them about Liam. I still remember that conversation word for word. It was a Sunday afternoon, the sun streaming through the living room window, dust particles dancing in the light. I sat across from them, nervous but excited. "I'm getting married," I said with a smile that could have lit up the entire house. My father looked up from his newspaper. My mother froze with her teacup halfway to her lips. "To who?" she asked, her voice cautious. "To Liam," I answered confidently. There was a brief silence before the storm began. My mother's expression shifted first from curiosity to shock, and then to something much colder. My father folded his paper slowly, as if preparing for a battle. "Julia," he said in a low voice, "you know what kind of family we are. Liam doesn't come from our background. Are you really thinking this through?" I tried to explain. Liam was hardworking, kind, brilliant. He'd built his own small business from the ground up. He loved me deeply and respected me more than anyone I had ever met. But none of that mattered to them. In their world, love wasn't the currency that determined worth, status was. My mother's words cut through the room like a blade. "If you choose him, don't expect us to support your decisions." I laughed nervously at first, thinking they were just trying to scare me. But the more I pleaded, the colder they became. Over the next few weeks, they started pulling away in quiet, deliberate ways. They skipped engagement dinners, made excuses to avoid meeting Liam's family, and every phone call felt like walking through a minefield. I kept trying because, despite everything, they were my parents. I thought love would eventually melt their pride. I visited them almost every weekend, hoping to see some sign of softening. I brought wedding magazines, talked about venues, invited them to dress fittings. My mother listened with a blank expression. My father pretended to be busy. Slowly, I realized I wasn't talking to them. I was talking to a wall. As the wedding date grew closer, I could feel their silence becoming intentional, almost punishing. They were waiting for me to break, to call everything off and come back to their version of the right path. Then came the wedding day. I woke up at dawn, my stomach fluttering with nerves and hope. The dress hung by the window, glowing in the morning sun. My bridesmaids were buzzing around, laughing, doing their makeup. But I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. Not a call, not a text, not a single word from the two people I thought would stand by me no matter what. The ceremony started. The music played softly, the doors opened, and I began walking down the aisle. My best friend held my arm, smiling brightly, but inside, I was breaking. Every step felt heavier, not because of the dress, but because my parents weren't there. Guests turned to look at me, many smiling, some whispering. They noticed the empty seats in the front row. Those seats, reserved for my parents, sat there like silent accusations. I forced a smile, exchanged vows, kissed Liam, and celebrated with everyone else. But there was a quiet ache in my heart that no champagne toast could numb. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and in all that time, not a single attempt came from them to mend what they had broken. No congratulations, no how are you. It was as if I had been erased from their world. I cried at night sometimes, not because I regretted my choice, but because it hurt to know that their love had conditions. But during those same months, something else began to bloom inside me. A fire, a determination I had never felt before. If they didn't want to be part of my life because I chose love, then I would build a life so extraordinary that they would never forget what they had walked away from. Liam and I threw ourselves into our work. We weren't born into wealth, but we weren't afraid of hard work. I expanded my small design business, pouring every bit of my creativity into it. Liam supported me every step of the way. We worked late nights, sacrificed weekends, and learned from every setback. Within a year, the business exploded in popularity. One viral post turned into 1,000 orders. One small studio turned into a thriving company with international clients. My name started appearing in magazines and online articles, not as someone's daughter, but as Julia, the entrepreneur who had built something from the ground up. And then came the Porsche. I'll never forget the feeling of sliding into the driver's seat for the first time, the sleek black leather, the hum of the engine, the quiet sense of victory that filled my chest. This wasn't just a car. It was a symbol that I had made it on my own, that I didn't need their approval to shine. I parked it in front of our new office, stepped out in a crisp white suit, and had Liam snap a picture. I uploaded it to Instagram with a simple caption. Hard work speaks louder than silence. I didn't expect what happened next. The photo spread like wildfire. Friends shared it, clients reposted it, even local magazines picked it up. It wasn't just about the car, it was about the woman standing next to it. The same woman her parents had ignored, now commanding the attention of thousands. And then, my phone rang. Mom. For a moment my heart skipped. Months of silence, and suddenly her name appeared on my screen. A tiny part of me, the little girl who used to run into her arms for comfort, hoped this was it, the apology, the acknowledgement. The moment they finally realized how much they had hurt me, I answered, my voice steady. Hello? Her tone was sweet, almost rehearsed. Julia, she began, we need to talk. Let's have a family meeting tomorrow. A family meeting. After all this time. No, we miss you. No, we're proud of you. As no, we're sorry. We're just a sudden interest right after seeing the Porsche. I didn't need to ask how she saw it. I knew my relatives had probably sent it to her within minutes of it going online. They were suddenly interested now that their daughter had become someone worth showing off again. I hung up the call and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the broken bride from a year ago. She was strong. She was successful. She was no longer begging for their love. A slow smile spread across my face as I whispered to myself, they'll remember this meeting for the rest of their lives. And with that, I agreed to the meeting. But this time, I wasn't going as the daughter desperate for approval. I was going as Julia, the woman they underestimated. And I had a surprise waiting for them. The next morning, I woke up with a strange mix of calmness and anticipation. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that makes the world look like it's holding its breath. As I got dressed, every detail felt deliberate. The tailored white suit, the subtle gold jewelry, the neat bun that gave me a sharp, powerful look. I wasn't going there as their little girl anymore. I was going as the woman they had once dismissed. Liam watched me from the doorway, arms crossed, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. You ready for this? He asked. I met his gaze in the mirror. More than ever, I replied. The drive to their house felt different than it used to. The roads were the same. The trees still lined the sidewalks. But I wasn't the same. I wasn't the girl nervously clutching the steering wheel, rehearsing what to say to make them proud. I was Julia, the woman who built her empire while they watched from a distance. As I turned into their street, I noticed a few curious faces peeking from neighboring houses. My Porsche glided down the road like a quiet statement. By the time I parked in front of the gate, I caught a glimpse of the curtains twitching inside their living room. Of course, they were watching. I walked up to the door slowly, every step measured. When my mother opened it, her expression betrayed a flash of surprise before she quickly masked it with a stiff smile. Julia, she said, her voice sweet but slightly strained. You look different. I smiled politely. Success tends to do that, I replied lightly, stepping inside. The house smelled the same. A mix of lavender air freshener and the faint aroma of my mother's cooking. Everything looked exactly as it had a year ago, but I felt like a stranger stepping into a museum of a past life. My father was sitting in the living room, wearing his usual press shirt and formal trousers, pretending to read the newspaper. He glanced up, his eyes lingering on my outfit, my posture, the way I carried myself. He didn't say it, but the look said everything. She's changed. We sat down, and for a few moments there was nothing but awkward silence. My parents were the ones who had called this family meeting, but it seemed they didn't quite know how to start. Finally, my mother cleared her throat. Julia, it's been a long time. We're glad you came. I leaned back, crossing my legs, my face calm. It has, I replied evenly. Almost a year to be exact, since my wedding. You know, the one you didn't attend? The words hung in the air like smoke. My mother fidgeted with the edge of her shawl. My father's jaw tightened. We didn't come because my father started, but I raised a hand gently. I know why you didn't come. You made it very clear. I didn't marry the man you wanted. I didn't live the life you chose for me. So you chose to pretend I didn't exist. The silence deepened. My father cleared his throat again, shifting uncomfortably. My mother tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Julia, dear, we were just worried about your future. Wow, you know how families talk. We didn't want you to make a mistake. I laughed softly, not mockingly, but with the kind of confidence that comes when the truth is finally on your side. And yet, here we are. I didn't make a mistake. I made a life. A beautiful one. A successful one. While you were worried about what families would say, I was busy becoming someone worth talking about. That seemed to sting. My father shifted again, his newspaper now folded and forgotten on the side table. We saw your post, he finally said. The car, there it was. The real reason behind this sudden meeting, not regret. Not love, curiosity, interest, status. I tilted my head slightly. Yes, my Porsche. Quite the conversation starter, isn't it? My mother forced a laugh. It's beautiful. You must be doing very well. I met her eyes steadily. I am, and every bit of it was earned through my own hands. They exchanged a glance. I could almost hear the unspoken thoughts between them. For years they believed I couldn't shine without their approval. And now here I was, glowing brighter than ever. Then my father leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Julia, we thought it's time. You come back home more often. Be part of the family gatherings again. You know, people have been asking about you. People have been asking about you. Not we miss you. Not we're proud of you. Just a convenient way to polish their image now that their daughter had become someone. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm a little. Then I spoke softly but firmly. You ignored my wedding. You ignored my happiness. For months you didn't call. You didn't check in. You made your choice. And now you want me to play daughter again because your friends have questions? My mother's composure cracked slightly. Julia, that's not fair. No, I interrupted gently. What wasn't fair was sitting alone on the most important day of my life, wondering if I was still loved. What wasn't fair was building my life while pretending the two people who raised me didn't exist, because they decided I didn't fit their expectations anymore. What wasn't fair was your silence. And you know what? That silence taught me something valuable. It taught me that I don't need your approval to live a life worth living. For the first time, they didn't have a quick response. The house that once felt suffocating was now filled with my voice, steady and unshakable. And I could see in their eyes that they weren't expecting this version of me. They were expecting the Julia who begged, who explained, who tried to make them proud. But that Julia was gone. After that intense conversation, my parents decided to shift the topic towards safer grounds, as if changing the subject could rewrite the past. My mother started talking about upcoming family events, a cousin's engagement, an aunt's birthday dinner, and a reunion planned for winter. It was almost amusing to watch them try to fold me back into the family. Narrative as if nothing had happened. Everyone would love to see you, she said brightly, sipping her tea. You've been away too long, Julia. Your presence will make a difference. I leaned back in my chair, carefully observing them. For years I craved these invitations. I waited for the moment they would finally accept me for who I was. And now, here they were, extending those invitations not out of love, but because I had become valuable in their eyes again. It wasn't bitterness I felt, it was clarity. Crystal clear clarity that I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. My father cleared his throat again. There's also another matter, he began, his tone suddenly more serious. We've been considering some family investments. A few relatives are coming together to purchase a commercial property. It's a good opportunity. We thought since you're doing well, maybe you'd like to be part of it. I couldn't help but smile faintly. There it was, and the real reason. This family meeting wasn't just about mending emotional bridges. It was also about business. Interesting, I said softly. So, this is what the family meeting was really about? My father shifted uncomfortably. Julia, don't take it the wrong way. It's just, we thought this could be beneficial for all of us. I stared at him for a long moment, my hands wrapped around my teacup. Dad, when I started my business, do you remember what you told me? He hesitated, clearly unsure where I was going with this. I said a lot of things back then, he muttered. You said, I continued calmly, that I was being naive. That business wasn't for people like me. That I should focus on something more appropriate for a woman. You told me I'd fail. You refused to support me when I needed advice. And now, after everything I built on my own, suddenly I'm good enough to be your partner? The silence that followed was heavy. My father avoided my eyes, pretending to straighten the papers on the table. My mother tried to smooth things over, placing a hand on his arm. Julia, he didn't mean... No, I interrupted gently. He meant exactly what he said. And that's fine, because I used that doubt as fuel. Every late night, every deal I closed, every door I pushed open, I carried those words with me. They didn't break me. They built me. My mother's eyes softened for a moment, almost as if she was seeing me for the first time. You've changed so much, she whispered. I smiled faintly. I didn't change, Mom. I just became the person I was always meant to be, without waiting for anyone's permission. The room grew quiet again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. For the first time, they seemed to truly listen. I could see it in their expressions, a mixture of pride, guilt, and realization. I decided to break the silence. Hi, look, I didn't come here to hold grudges or throw accusations. I came because you called. And honestly, I was curious to see if you had changed. But it seems you're still learning to understand who I am now. And that's okay. I'm not here to prove anything anymore. My father finally looked up, his face more composed. Julia, he said slowly, I may not have supported you the way I should have. I may not have believed in you, and for that, I'm sorry. I can see now that you've achieved something remarkable. I'm proud of you. For a second, I almost didn't believe I heard him right. Those words, I'm proud of you, were ones I had imagined countless times as a child, as a teenager, as a struggling adult, and now after everything, they came out quietly, almost awkwardly, but they were real. My chest tightened slightly, not from pain but from the unexpected rush of emotion. I nodded slowly. Thank you, I whispered. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. My mother reached for my hand gently. We missed you, she said softly. More than we wanted to admit. For the first time since I walked in, my defenses softened a little. This wasn't the reconciliation I imagined, but it was real in its own imperfect way. People don't change overnight, and neither do broken bonds. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new, not the past trying to reclaim me, but a future where I stood on my own and they finally learned to see me as I was. When the meeting finally wrapped up, I stood near the doorway for a moment looking at my parents. There they were, the same two people who had once walked right past my happiness, who hadn't even shown up to the most important day of my life, because they thought I wasn't good enough, or maybe because their pride wouldn't let them. Yet here they sat now, humbled by the reality of who I had become. They had called this meeting to talk, to reconnect, but beneath all their words was an unspoken truth. They finally realized what they had lost, and I finally realized what I no longer needed to chase. My father was stacking the papers neatly on the table while my mother fiddled nervously with her bracelet, avoiding my eyes. Julia, my father said slowly, as if testing the weight of each syllable. We'd like to keep in touch more often. No pressure, of course, but maybe Sunday dinners, or just coffee sometimes. I almost laughed. Sunday dinners. The very dinners I was never invited to once I moved out. The ones I used to hear about through distant relatives. Now suddenly I was being welcomed to them like some honored guest. But instead of bitterness, I felt something else entirely. Power. Quiet, steady, earned power. I'll think about it, I replied with a calm smile. The things are different now. My life is full, and my time is valuable. But we'll see. My mother looked at me with a flicker of sadness in her eyes. We just want a chance to make things right, she said softly. You'll get that chance, I said gently. But it has to be real. No pretending nothing happened. No brushing the past under the rug. I built my life from the ground up. And I won't let anyone rewrite that story for their comfort. They both nodded slowly. I could tell the words landed differently now. This wasn't the naive girl they could guilt or manipulate anymore. This was the woman who owned her path, her decisions, and her future. As I stepped out of the house, the crisp evening air hit my face. My black Porsche 911 was parked in the driveway, its sleek body gleaming under the porch lights. I walked toward it slowly, feeling their eyes on me from the window. This car wasn't just a machine, it was a symbol of every late night, every rejection turned into motivation, every step I took alone when no one believed in me. I opened the door, slid into the leather seat, and rested my hands on the steering wheel for a second. For years I had imagined moments of revenge as loud, explosive scenes, shouting matches, dramatic exits. But this wasn't loud. This was quiet, dignified, and absolute. True revenge isn't about hurting the other person. It's about becoming so untouchable that their regret becomes their companion. As the engine roared to life, I caught a glimpse of my parents through the rearview mirror. My mother had stepped out onto the porch, arms folded, watching me drive away. My father stood behind her, his face unreadable but heavy with thought. For a brief second, I almost saw the parents I had wished for, supportive, proud, present. But that vision faded as quickly as it came, replaced by reality. I backed out of the driveway slowly, deliberately. In my head, flashes of my wedding day replayed. The empty seats where my parents should have been, the whispered excuses, the sting of their absence. That pain used to consume me, but now it felt distant, like a chapter I had finally closed. Halfway down the street, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. "Julia, thank you for coming. We're proud of you. We love you." For a moment, I just stared at the screen, emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to maintain the wall I'd built for years. But another part of me, the part that had always craved their recognition, softened. I typed back simply, "Thank you." Nothing more, nothing less. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was honest. The city lights reflected on the hood of my car as I merged onto the main road. The wind rushed through the slightly open window, brushing against my hair. Freedom. Not the kind that comes from running away, but the kind that comes from finally standing still and realizing you're no longer tied to the weight of someone else's choices. For so long, I had believed that revenge meant making them feel what I felt, but the real revenge was this moment, me, driving forward in my own life, not defined by their absence anymore. I wasn't the forgotten daughter trying to earn their love. I was Julia, the woman who built her empire when no one believed she could. In the weeks that followed, something interesting happened. My parents started calling more often, not for favors, not for money, but just to talk. They came to a few of my company's public events, quietly sitting in the back. And it wasn't perfect, but it was real. The balance of power had shifted. I wasn't seeking their approval anymore. They were seeking connection. And this time, it was on my terms. One Sunday, I did show up for dinner, not because I needed them to see me, but because I wanted to see them, as two flawed humans trying, in their own imperfect way, to catch up to the woman I had become. As I walked into the dining room, their eyes lit up, not with ownership or judgment, but with something closer to respect. I sat at the table, laughing occasionally, listening to their stories, the bitterness that once filled. Every room between us was slowly being replaced with something new, cautious hope. I didn't forget the past, and I didn't forgive everything overnight, but I allowed space for something healthier to grow. Looking back now, I realized that my story wasn't just about revenge. It was about rediscovery of my worth, my strength, my identity. My parents ignoring my wedding had once broken me, but that same wound became the forge that shaped me. They remembered me when they saw the Porsche, yes, but I remembered who I was long before that. As the night ended and I stepped back into my car, I glanced at them one last time through the windshield. This time, I didn't feel the ache of a daughter abandoned. I felt the quiet satisfaction of a woman who no longer needed validation. My revenge was complete, not because they suffered, but because I thrived. And that, more than anything, was the legacy I intended to keep.